Yoga, fire! Slowly but steady, we are moving closer to Christmas Day. We are the 16th of December already, day number 16 of our 24 days of random awesomeness. And let's move right into today's bag, which is probably the heaviest we had so far, and also one of the biggest. Now, let's dig right into it. And there's a whole story I need to tell about this, because 2 days ago, 3 days ago, or 4 days ago already, I showed you something which I was pretty much into when I was young, a piece of electronic. And this, maybe you can already guess what this is. But the thing is that as I was so much into old video equipment, or new video equipment at the time, I of course worked as a student for a local TV channel here in Europe, and I managed to recuperate this thing. Now, I was working as a student at RTL, and RTL is like a very big TV channel here in Europe. They have like programs in German, in French, in Belgium, in the Netherlands, in Poland. There are so many of these channels nowadays, but RTL started off here in this area where I live. So I was working as a student for them sometimes to archive old videotapes. And I was working in a old stock of old video equipment. And there was a big flight case standing in the corner with this thing in it. And there was a writing on it that said poubelle, which means trash. So I asked the manager what's going to happen with this, and they said, well, this is stuff that gets destroyed because it just takes up space. And yeah, as I was like totally into equipment like this, I said, can I have it? And he said yes. So this is probably one of the only remaining, one of the first video studio cameras they had here at RTL. And yes, this is a camera built in, I think, 1986, maybe earlier even. So this is almost 40 years old. This is, of course, almost a museum's piece. This is a studio camera, so when I turn this around, you won't see any compartment where you can put a tape in. This is just a camera used in TV studios in the 1980s, probably even early 1980s. Because RTL was like partnering with Sony, so they got like the newest equipment at the time. So this is probably even one of the first versions of this camera. This camera is the, it's not the 300, but the 330. It's the AP-330 AP, no, BVP-330 AP. That's the thing. It's a Sony camera. Of course, in that time, they did not already had the CCD image sensors. This one has Vidicon tubes, video tubes in there. 3 of them for each color, red, green and blue. And yes, a pretty interesting thing. And let's have a first look from the front. What do we have? We have our viewfinder. And in that time they still used the color beige. Why? I don't know. But yeah, why not? For a studio camera, it should be fine. So you have your contrast and brightness. You have your tally, the little red light that goes on. On the side you have a switch to turn off the tally. For example, when you have something that mirrors on a stage, you don't want to mirror back the red light. A peaking knob, so this helps you find focus with this viewfinder. Then you had like an option to move this viewfinder in every axis here. So you can, yeah, move this in, and adjust it. You have a cold shoe adapter for stuff, a microphone holder. What else? Of course, this is a professional camera. You have the option to take off the lens. So there is a ring here that you can twist, and then the whole optics will come off. This is that one here. You can pull this up and lift off the whole lens compartment. You have a doubler. This is like a convectional lens. that sits in here, and it will move in front of the Vidicon tubes to double the amount of zoom, which is 14. So with the doubler you would have like 28 times of optical zoom. You have a little macro ring here in the back. You have your zoom, you have your focus, and then else here at the front you have does it focus this time? You have a VTR button, which would start a VTR if you hook up a VTR to this. Return button, that's basically a return signal from the PGM, from the from the image mixer, so to speak. So you see in your viewfinder what actually is going out to the program. You have your white balance settings here. You have white and black balance, auto or preset. In case of a studio camera, usually there would be a shader sitting inside of the production room, and he would match the colors of the camera. So in a studio setup, you would not need these switches here. Then here in the front, and I think there will be zoom down for that, you have several things, and I need to adjust brightness or exposure for this. Let's make it a little bit brighter. That's better. So first of all, you have a filter compartment here. When you open this little hatch, and this is still standard nowadays, it looks a bit different, but you have like a wheel that you can turn, and in here there are glass filters. So when you turn this, the glass filter in front of the Vidicon tubes will change. So you have like a daylight, a tungsten, or a ND filter that you can change here. Even nowadays they can do this from the production room, so they can remote control this, so it's motorized. In that time, of course, this was all manual. So then you have this little compartment here. It says auto start, memory, preset, auto center. I think, if I remember correct, this is a button that adjusts the Vidicon tubes alignment. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's what this is there for. Then here, this is a bit different than today, because basically the cameras are still looking kind of the same form factor, but these buttons are a little bit different, because nowadays you have like standby and on, and here you have an option says preheat, because those Vidicon tubes needed to be preheated before launching or starting them up. So this is on preheat. Then you have your gain setting. You have 0, 9 and 18 dB gain, which increases the sensitivity of the Vidicon tubes to light. So you get a little bit more picture, but also a little bit more noise. Next would be, well, the output. You can switch between bars and camera. Put this on bars for now. And level indication, I don't know exactly what this is for. It's on and off. Let's leave this on on. Then let's move this like this. Now we have a little compartment here, and by the way, you have this thing. This is quite neat, because modern cameras don't have that anymore, but this is basically to sit on your, this sits on your shoulder, and this gives you a little bit more stability. My English very good today. So let's zoom back in. Now, what is this? This is a little compartment. I'm not sure. This is probably for an AV engineer. You have a ENC and regular. So probably this must have to do with colors and things. So everything that needs to be adjusted on camera that cannot be remote controlled, adjustable. Now back here we have our main power switch. Then we have probably a fuse. This says call. This I think is part of the intercom. So when you push this, you can talk to the director that sits in the production room. You have 2 adjustments for volume, probably one for the program that you are recording and one for the director. So if the director starts screaming, you can close this down. You have an intercom connection. I think this is a standard jack plug, if I'm not sure, but I think so. So this is where your headphone or your headset would go into. PGM, that's the program return sound, so you hear what somebody on stage would say. You have an earphone, which is basically a mini jack plug. Weirdly that they put this on a studio camera, but Why not? So let's turn this around, and I don't know if that's a good idea. I have to be careful because Vidicon tubes, they don't like being moved too much. What do we have here? Well, this is called a multi-core plug. Multi-core because those studio cameras, basically, this is only the camera part. There's a whole another part that sits in the production room or next to it, where you have like, there's a big box. Every camera has a big box where this hooks up to, and this box will be able to give control over the iris, for example, over the color shading, over multiple things. Also in this here you will have multiple signals. You have RGB signal coming out of the camera going to the production room. You will have a return that comes back from the production room where you can see what's actually on PGM. You have your intercom, you have an audio plug or audio signal, which would be your microphone from the camera that goes through here. So all kinds of communication goes through this thing. Nowadays, of course, this is all fiber optics. You have like one plug, you put it in there and that's it. In the time, it was a simple multi-core, which had its advantages. I mean, of course, the cable is way thicker than nowadays. But, you know, when one cable was broken, still the rest would be functional. Nowadays, when there is something wrong with a fiber optic cable, the cable will be trashed. Yes. Now, I think this is quite kind of the same thing than that one, but this is probably just a picture signal and maybe control over colors and iris. I don't think that there's anything else to this. Now let's put on this safety plug. This one I don't know actually. It could be like an auxiliary output for 12 volts or something. Usually this high-rose connection looks like 12 volts. Now what else do we have? Let's turn this around carefully. I will lay this on its side here, maybe like this. We are upside down, but that's the easiest way to do it. We have a microphone input, so this is where your microphone that sits up here would hook up to. You have a 12 volt or 10 to 17 volt DC input. Basically, you would get power from the multi-core connection, but this can be powered externally as well. Then we have, I don't know what's behind here. What is this? Oh, this looks like a battery. Huh. It looks like a battery. It's probably because it is a battery. Let's have a look. What is this? Let's turn this around and it comes out. Yeah, it is a battery. It's kind of a... What is this? This is a pretty old battery. I never saw this. Huh. Looks like 3 button cells, but... It's probably to remind some settings you set inside the camera. But anyways, this battery is probably empty after almost 40 years. So let's close this back up. Come on. And these cameras had, they were pretty intense in things of maintaining them working, because those Vidicon tubes, they were pretty, yeah, how do you say? They have their own life, so sometimes they just run out of sync or out of convergence. Convergence, do you say that? Just by that, without any reason. Now let's get back here. This is a high-rose connection, probably for some color matching things, or maybe simply image that goes out here, picture. I don't know, but this is a Genlock. This is to hook up multiple cameras and synchronize them timecode wise. You have 2 composite outputs on BNC, so this is where we can grab a picture signal from. Now I will move this here. Let's do this. I will zoom out a little. Let's open this thing up. I'm pretty sure you want to see how a 1980s Vidicon tube professional video camera looks inside, because usually amateur cameras, and by the way, I'm checking if I have a coin, because of course these cameras can be opened with a coin, as in the field you would need to open them. You don't need special equipment. Of course, usually, especially in the 80s, amateur tube cameras had one Vidicon tube that produced those 3 colors, RGB. In this case, a professional camera needed 3 tubes, so 1 tube for each color. And according to that, you would need a whole or a bigger circuit to control all of this. And you need like an optical prism and quite an interesting thing, I'd say. I already opened this once, but it's been a while. And usually, that's at least what I've got told from an old technician who worked on these beasts. In the morning, you would have to preheat the cameras, you would open them, and you would recalibrate the alignment of the tubes. And it's like a morning thing. You drink your coffee, you go to the studio, and you turn on the cameras. And now, let's have a look in here. Looks pretty cool, especially for like that time. You see, on the first view, you see that this is a professional unit, because all the segments, all the different compartments are separate cards. So you can pull them out, swap them with a new one, or fix them, or whatever. So it's not all, it's not screwed together like nowadays, where you have to invest like a half a day of work just to get to the actual board you need. Here you can pull them out, you can work on them. You can work on them as is, as you see all those little potentiometers. You can screw around in there while the camera is turned on, measuring with a vectorscope, for example, to calibrate everything. Now, what I know, and I'm not a technical engineer, these little potentiometers, this is the Convergence. So this is like to put the 3 colors over each other. So basically you have like an X and Y axis, and you can calibrate them that red, green and blue are matching over each other together. And then you have like intensity of color. I think somewhere here, this is the viewfinder. So you have like zebra, and zebra is like a thing that shows you exposure inside of the viewfinder. You have a PAL cards. This is probably for program or return picture or something. And I think that until here, all this belongs to the actual 3 Vidicon tube setup. So you see here, we have blue, green and red dots. So these are our 3 Vidicon tubes, and here in the middle supposed to be a big glass prism, and that is made by Fuji Photo Optical Company, as you can see. And here also you see that focus wheel, that filter wheel. Don't think you see the filters themselves. They are pretty much pretty great hidden, because of course you don't want to have any dust on there. Now a lot of little adjustment points where I have no clue what to do with. I remember a couple of months ago I was screwing around with this to some sort of rematch those 3 tubes, because of course after years and years of standing in a flight case, all those settings are probably bad, so you have to recalibrate everything. I will close this up right now because I'm not an electronics engineer and I don't want to break anything, but of course I will grab my capture device in a second and we will try to fire up this beast. By the way, I remember when I was working there for RTL that they had some spare Vidicon tubes, because I think that was something, those tubes had to be swapped or changed once in a while. And it was pretty fascinating because those tubes, they were packed in some sort of a gimbal. So you had like a wooden box. Let me zoom out. You had a wooden box, and inside of that box there was a gimbal, probably out of plastic of some sort. It was a pretty big box, and there was like a plastic container where one of those tubes were sitting in there, and the whole thing was held by a gimbal in multiple axes. So however you turned this box, the Vidicon tube would always stay straight in that box. Why, I don't know, but that's why I'm careful lying this thing over, because I don't know if it's actually a good thing to turn around or turn upside down a Vidicon tube. As I said, I have no clue. I'm not a professional TV engineer. Now, what should we do? Well, so let's put this here, maybe somewhere we can see it in frame. Let's grab our nice little new capturing device here that I already hooked up, and I have a cable, and I have one of these adapters, which basically is a RCA to BNC adapter that we need to hook up to the test output here on the side. And then we would need some power of some sort. So I have actually a camera power supply with a 4-pin XLR. The nice thing though, this is still standard today, so it's a standard regular camera power supply that still works with these cameras. And as you have seen, this camera goes from 10 to 17 volts, so it's not very specific when it comes to powering this thing up. Yes, so I will turn on the power supply, I will turn on the camera here. We are set to preheat. Honestly, I don't know how long this takes to preheat, so yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Now, the camera is set to bars, color bars, so when I fire it up, usually it should turn to color bars first. There is no signal, so I cannot record right now. So I will turn on the camera right now, and I already heard some little, I heard the iris at the lens, and we have a nice signal. Let's record this already so you can see it, and a pretty steady, nice signal. And remember, this camera is way older than my M10, my Panasonic camera, and this still, like, it works like the first day. And because I'm saying that, because I just saw that the viewfinder turned on, and the picture is amazing. It is nice and crisp and very bright. So this vacuum tube in here is still perfectly fine. Pretty amazing after all these years, because I mean, this camera could stand in a TV museum nowadays. Now, should we turn on the camera? Let me tilt this over a little so you see the knob. Let's turn it on. Let's see. And we have something. You see some red here. This is like a basic. This is typical for a old tube camera, where the convergence is not good. Now let's put this here. I will move the camera a little bit further back so we can see anything. Let's zoom out, and you see that the zoom is actually working. The motor, the focus, well, the focus does not have a motor. Let's turn it to camera. That is the case. Let's open the iris and see what we get. All right, we get some sort of a picture. Very pink. I don't know if that's a thing about white balance, or probably inside the camera. Or wait, I maybe have chosen the wrong filter. This is even more red. It should be all right. But let's maybe put this on preset. Is this better? I mean, you know, this camera is very, very old, and you see all those. You see the red edges of the tube, the vacuum tube. So probably it is, the tubes might be like have reached their end of life after that time, which is okay. But amazingly that we still have a picture. And the nice thing is, can you see this? You remember that Michael Jackson music video where they used this effect for like multiplying Michael Jackson 1,000 times in the picture? Well, that's kind of the same thing. You see, that's typical for Vidicon tubes. You have this hologram, or this phantom light effect. Pretty neat. When I turn the zoom on manual, you can see when I zoom quickly, see how it looks like, well, the Star Wars effect, you know, the light speed effect. Was it Star Wars? Yeah, it was Star Wars. Or Starship Enterprise. But yeah, pretty neat. Let's see, can I get focus here? Probably when I use macro. There you can see, we see some detail. It's pretty astonishing. Of course, this blue halo you see, that's because the blue Vidicon 2 probably is off with the other with the other tubes. Now this is on 0 dB, this is 9 dB, and this is 18 dB of gain. So this is that switch I showed you before. All right, so what should we do? Well, next I will, oh, here's that's the doubler. where I was talking about before. So it doubles the amount of zoom. Now, what should we do next? Well, I will put this thing on a tripod because I still have the actual the camera plate that you put on a tripod. So I mount this on a tripod and I will try to bring it down onto the bench so we have a nice picture, kind of the same angle than this camera. Of course, I cannot mount this camera over there because this is just way too heavy. But I will try my best to put it very close to it. I'll be back in a second. This is as good as it gets, at least for my capabilities of tweaking around in this camera without any vectorscope and any other measuring devices. I'm not a television engineer, so yeah, I tried my best. But of course, there is still problems with the alignment of the tubes. You see that we have some weird shadowing, ghosting going on. And this is something I cannot change. There must be like somewhere out there who could, like, you know, repair or redo this camera in a way that you can get pictures out of how they looked in the early 80s. But I'm still satisfied that we at least have a picture after almost 40 years out of this camera, and we have this awesome ghosting effect going on. I love that. Yes, pretty cool. Let's have a look. What do we have tomorrow? The 17th already. We're getting close. Let's see, what is this? It's a bigger bag. It's not too heavy. I would say maybe 2.5 pounds, something like that. And yes, it sounds plasticky. Maybe some toys again? We'll see. Let me put this out of the way. There are tons of cables hanging off right now of this camera, so I have to be a little bit careful. Now, I hope you enjoyed, and I see you tomorrow. Until then, see ya.